The ink on the divorce papers was barely dry when Sebastian Sterling let out a laugh that chilled the entire courtroom. He tossed the pen onto the mahogany table, looking at his wife Amelia with pure contempt. "Finally," he sneered, checking his Rolex. "I'm free of you, and I'm keeping the empire. You get nothing but the clothes on your back, just as the prenup says." He turned to leave, already dialing his mistress, but he didn't see the grey envelope in Judge Miller's hand. He didn't see the pity in his own lawyer's eyes. And he definitely didn't expect the judge to lock the courtroom doors and say, "Sit down, Mr. Sterling. The divorce isn't over. We haven't read your father-in-law's real will yet." The silence in courtroom 4B of the Manhattan Supreme Court was suffocating, broken only by the aggressive scratching of a fountain pen. Sebastian Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Dynamics, and arguably one of the most powerful men in New York real estate, signed his name with a flourish. The S was large and sweeping, a signature that had authorized billion-dollar mergers and the demolition of historic neighborhoods. Today, however, it was authorizing the demolition of his 12-year marriage to Amelia. He sat back in the leather chair, smoothing the lapels of his $3,000 bespoke Italian suit. He didn't look at Amelia. He hadn't looked at her properly in years. To him, she was just a ghost in his penthouse, a woman who wore cardigans that were 2 seasons out of fashion and refused to attend the galas that were essential for his image. She was a relic of a time before he was Sebastian Sterling the mogul. Back then he was just a hungry law student, and she was the shy daughter of Archibald Caldwell, an eccentric old money philanthropist who had taken a liking to Sebastian. "Is that it?" Sebastian asked, his voice booming slightly in the acoustic chamber of the court. "Are we done here?" His lawyer, a shark named Atticus Reed, who charged by the minute, nodded smugly. "The papers are signed, Mr. Sterling. Per the prenuptial agreement of 2012, Mrs. Sterling waives her right to alimony in exchange for a lump sum settlement of $50,000. The properties, the stock portfolio, the Hamptons estate, and the copyright to the Sterling Dynamics brand remain solely in your name." Sebastian smirked. $50,000. It was an insult, a crumb from his table, but it was legal. He had made sure of it. He had bullied her into signing that prenup the night before their wedding, telling her it was just standard procedure for his business. She had signed it with tears in her eyes, trusting him. "Pathetic," Sebastian muttered under his breath, finally glancing at his wife. Amelia sat on the other side of the aisle. She looked small. She was wearing a simple grey dress, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She had no lawyer. She had told the court she would represent herself, a move Sebastian had laughed about for weeks with his mistress Jessica. "She's so stupid, she's going to save me legal fees on her own destruction," he had texted Jessica just 10 minutes ago. "Amelia," Sebastian said, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "Do you have the bank account details for the transfer? I want to get this 50 grand sent over before I forget. I have a flight to Paris tonight." Amelia didn't look up. She just stared at the wooden grain of the table. "I don't want the money, Sebastian." "Suit yourself," he scoffed, standing up. "More for me. Judge, are we dismissed? I have a reservation at Le Bernardin." Judge Harold Miller, a man with a face carved from granite and eyebrows like bristly caterpillars, had been watching the scene with unreadable eyes. He adjusted his spectacles, looking from the arrogant billionaire to the silent woman. "Sit down, Mr. Sterling," the judge said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Sebastian paused, a frown creasing his perfect forehead. "Excuse me, the papers are signed. The decree absolute is a formality." "I said sit down," Judge Miller repeated harder this time. He placed a hand on a thick, sealed file that had been sitting on his bench untouched for the entire proceedings. Atticus Reed, Sebastian's lawyer, sensed a shift in the air. He stood up. "Your Honor, my client has a tight schedule. Unless there is a procedural error." "There is no procedural error, Mr. Reed," the judge interrupted. "However, there is a matter of the estate of the late Archibald Caldwell, the petitioner's father." Sebastian rolled his eyes, dropping back into his chair with an exaggerated sigh. "Archibald. The old man died 6 years ago. His estate was settled. He left everything to Amelia, and since she has no business sense, I kindly absorbed the assets into Sterling Dynamics to manage them for her. It's all accounted for in the prenup. What is this about?" "Not quite everything," Judge Miller said. He picked up a letter opener. The sound of the blade slicing through the heavy wax seal of the envelope echoed in the silent room. Sebastian checked his phone under the table. "A text from Jessica Champagne is on ice, baby. Hurry up," he typed back. "Judge is dragging it out. Old bore. Be there in 20. "Mr. Sterling." The judge began pulling out a yellowed document that looked far older than the modern court papers. "When Archibald Caldwell passed, a standard will was read. That will transferred his liquid assets to his daughter. You promptly convinced her to transfer those funds into a joint account which you then drained to buy your first skyscraper. Is that correct?" "It was an investment," Sebastian corrected sharply. "An investment that paid off tenfold. She benefited from the lifestyle it provided." "You mean the lifestyle you enjoyed while she stayed home?" the judge asked pointedly. "She doesn't like to travel," Sebastian snapped. "Look, what is this?" "Some posthumous lecture. This," Judge Miller said, holding up the document, "is a conditional codicil, a hidden will, if you like. Archibald Caldwell was a very sharp man. Mr. Sterling, he knew you. He knew you were ambitious, and he suspected you were morally flexible." Amelia finally looked up. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but there was something else in them. Not fear. It looked like resignation, or perhaps anticipation. "Archibald filed this document with the High Court under a specific clause," the judge continued. "It was to remain sealed and unread until the exact moment a divorce decree was signed between his daughter and yourself. Specifically, if the divorce was initiated by you." Sebastian felt a prickle of irritation. "So the old man wrote a letter from the grave, telling me he hates me." "Fine. Read it. Then I'm leaving." "It is not a letter, Mr. Sterling," the judge said, a small, cold smile touching his lips. "It is a transfer of deed." Atticus Reed went pale. He leaned over to Sebastian. "Sebastian, shut up. Let me handle this." "Transfer of what deed?" Sebastian ignored his lawyer. "I own everything. The buildings, the land, the patents." "Actually," the judge read from the paper, adjusting his glasses. "I, Archibald Caldwell, being of sound mind, do hereby grant the uses of my primary assets, specifically the land located at 400 Fifth Avenue, the Caldwell Industrial Park in Jersey, and the intellectual property rights to the Caldwell Trust to my son-in-law, Sebastian Sterling, for the duration of his union with my daughter." The room went dead silent. Sebastian blinked. "What?" "It continues," the judge read. "This grant is a lease of goodwill. However, should Sebastian Sterling ever file to dissolve the marriage, or should he be found to have been unfaithful the ownership of said assets, and any structures built upon said land, shall revert immediately and irrevocably to my daughter Amelia Caldwell." Sebastian froze. The smirk fell from his face like a shattering plate. 400 Fifth Avenue. That was the Sterling Tower, the headquarters of his company, the crown jewel of his empire. That's impossible, Sebastian stammered. I built that tower. I paid for the steel. I paid for the glass. On land you didn't own, the judge said calmly. You built a castle in someone else's sandbox, Mr. Sterling, and now you've just kicked yourself out of the sandbox. The air in the courtroom seemed to vibrate. Sebastian's lawyer, Atticus, was frantically typing on his tablet, sweat beading on his forehead. This is ridiculous. Sebastian stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. His face, usually a mask of composed vanity, was turning a shade of crimson. That document is a forgery. Archibald gave me his blessing. He gave me the seed money. He gave you a loan of trust. Amelia spoke for the first time. Her voice was soft, melodic, but it cut through Sebastian's shouting. Sebastian whipped around to face her. You knew about this, you planned this. I didn't know the details, Amelia said, standing up slowly. She looked taller now, her posture straightening. Daddy told me he had insurance. He told me that if you ever stopped loving me, or if you ever revealed that you never loved me at all, he would make sure I was safe. I didn't realize he meant this. It's not legal, Sebastian shouted, turning back to the judge. You can't enforce a secret will from 6 years ago that undermines a prenuptial agreement. Actually, Atticus Reed whispered, his voice trembling. We can, Sebastian. The prenup covers assets you own. If this codicil proves you never owned the land the tower sits on, then the prenup doesn't apply to it. It's not a marital asset. It's hers. Sebastian felt the blood drain from his face. What are you saying? I'm saying, Atticus hissed, that if the land reverts to her, she owns the ground under your headquarters. Under New York law, if you don't have a ground lease, she can evict you, or charge you rent, or claim the improvements, meaning the building itself, as part of the land. Sebastian felt dizzy. He gripped the edge of the table. This is a nightmare. This is a joke. There is more, Judge Miller said, turning the page of the yellowed document. Archibald was thorough. He included a morality clause regarding the management of the Caldwell Trust. I don't care about the trust, Sebastian yelled. I care about my company. The trust owns your company's operating capital, the judge corrected. You see, Mr. Sterling, when you merged your startup with Archibald's accounts, you didn't read the fine print of the merger. You assumed full control. But the merger documents reference the founding charter of the Caldwell estate. The judge looked over his spectacles. Clause 4. If the acting manager, Sebastian Sterling, is found to be cohabitating with a partner outside of wedlock while still legally married, he is deemed unfit to manage the trust. The courtroom doors opened slightly at the back. A court officer stepped in, looking awkward. Your Honor, there is a woman outside making a disturbance. She says she's the fiancée of the plaintiff. Sebastian closed his eyes. Jessica. Let her in, Amelia said clearly. No, Sebastian shouted. Do not let her in. But it was too late. The heavy oak doors swung open, and Jessica stormed in. She was dressed in a white power suit, sunglasses perched on her head, looking every bit the trophy wife-to-be. She held a bottle of champagne in one hand and her phone in the other. Babe, she called out, oblivious to the tension in the room. The reservation is in an hour, and the paparazzi are already outside. Did you sign it? Are we rich? The silence that greeted her was deafening. Jessica stopped halfway down the aisle, her heels clicking to a halt. She looked at the judge, then at the pale, sweating Sebastian, and finally at Amelia. What's going on? Jessica asked, her voice dropping an octave. Perfect timing, miss. Judge Miller looked at a note on his desk. "Miss Jessica Vane." "That's me," she said defensively. "Who are you?" "I am the man who is reading the document that just bankrupted your boyfriend," Judge Miller said dryly. Jessica looked at Sebastian. "What is he talking about, Seb bankrupted?" Sebastian sank into his chair, putting his head in his hands. "Shut up, Jessica. Just shut up." "Miss Vane," the judge continued, enjoying this far too much. "Your presence here confirms the violation of Clause 4. By entering the courtroom and declaring your relationship and intent to celebrate, you have provided the final piece of evidence required to activate the reversion of the trust." Amelia walked out from behind her table. She walked slowly toward the center of the room, stopping just a few feet from Sebastian. "You told me I was worthless," Amelia said quietly. "Last night when you came home to pack your final bag, you told me that I was a bad investment, that you were finally writing off." Sebastian looked up, his eyes filled with hate. "You set me up. You played the victim for years." "I was the victim, Sebastian," Amelia said, her voice trembling with sudden emotion. "I loved you. I worshipped you. When you stopped coming home for dinner, I blamed myself. When you ridiculed my clothes, I tried to change. When you forbade me from coming to the office because I embarrassed you, I stayed home. I didn't know about this will, but my father, he saw what I couldn't." She looked at Jessica. "He's all yours, Jessica. But he comes with debt, not assets." "Wait a minute," Jessica said, her eyes narrowing. She looked at Sebastian. "Is this true? Do you lose the tower?" "I can fight it," Sebastian snarled, standing up again, regaining some of his bluster. "Atticus, we'll appeal. We'll tie this up in court for 20 years. She won't see a dime." Atticus Reed was shaking his head slowly. He was looking at the hidden will which the judge had passed to him. I can't fight this, Sebastian. It's ironclad. It was notarized by Supreme Court Justice Justice Harrison, 20 years ago. And there's a video affidavit." "A video?" Sebastian asked. "Yes," the judge said. "Would you like to see it?" Archibald recorded a message to be played in the event this day came. The judge pressed a button on his console. A large screen mounted on the side wall flickered to life. The static cleared to reveal an old man sitting in a high-backed leather chair. He looked frail, but his eyes were sharp, piercingly blue, just like Amelia's. "Hello, Sebastian," the recording began. The voice was raspy but strong. Sebastian stared at the screen, the ghost of the man he had betrayed, staring back at him. "If you are watching this," the video Archibald said, leaning into the camera, "it means you broke my little girl's heart. I hoped you wouldn't. I truly did. I wanted to believe you were the man she thought you were." The old man on the screen sighed. "But I'm a businessman, Sebastian, just like you. And in business we always hedge our bets. You thought you were the shark. You thought Amelia was the bait. But you forgot one thing, son." Video Archibald smiled a terrifying, knowing smile. "The water belongs to the whale, and I am the whale." The screen went black. "The water belongs to the whale," Amelia whispered, tears streaming down her face. She remembered her father saying that to her when she was a child. It meant that true power wasn't loud. It was deep. "So," Amelia said, wiping her face and turning to the judge, "what does this mean for today?" "Your Honor, it means," Judge Miller said, stamping a document with a heavy thud, "that the divorce is granted, but the financial settlement is rejected. We move to the asset stripping phase." "Asset stripping," Sebastian choked out. "Amelia creates the terms now," the judge said. "She owns the building your office is in. She owns the brand name. She owns the accounts. You are effectively trespassing on her property as we speak." Sebastian looked at Jessica, desperate for an ally. "Jess, baby, it's just a setback. We can rebuild. I'm a genius. Remember, I built it once. I can build it again." Jessica looked at Sebastian, then at the frantic lawyer, then at Amelia, who now stood like a queen in the center of the room. She looked down at the cheap engagement ring on her finger, a ring Sebastian had claimed was worth $500,000, but she suddenly doubted everything. "Rebuild," Jessica scoffed. "With what, you're 45 years old and you just lost your company to your ex-wife." She placed the champagne bottle on the bench. "I think I'll pass." "Jessica!" Sebastian screamed as she turned on her heel and walked out the door, the click-clack of her heels sounding like nails in his coffin. But the nightmare wasn't over, not even close. "Mr. Sterling," Atticus Reed said softly, looking at the last page of the hidden will. "You might want to sit down. There's a clause 5. It's about the tax fraud." The mention of tax fraud sucked the remaining oxygen out of the room. Sebastian Sterling, who had spent the last decade carefully curating an image of untouchable financial genius, felt a cold sweat break out down his back. Clause 5. Atticus Reed read his voice, barely a whisper. He looked at the judge, then at Sebastian, with the expression of a man realizing he was standing on a sinking ship without a life vest. "It says here that Archibald Caldwell structured the lease of the assets in a way that required specific tax filings that Sebastian never made." "Explain," Sebastian demanded, though his voice lacked its usual fire. He gripped the edge of the mahogany table, his knuckles white. "I have the best accountants in the city. We filed everything perfectly." "You filed as the owner," Judge Miller interceded, leaning forward. "You claimed depreciation on the Sterling Tower. You claimed capital expenditure deductions on the Caldwell Industrial Park. You claimed the property taxes as business expenses for an asset you held title to." The judge paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "But according to this will, which is retroactively effective, the moment you signed those divorce papers, you were never the owner. You were a tenant. A tenant cannot claim depreciation on a landlord's building, Mr. Sterling. For the last 6 years, you have been deducting millions of dollars from your taxes based on a lie." That's a clerical error," Sebastian stammered. "We can amend it. I'll pay the back taxes. I have the cash reserves." "Do you?" Amelia spoke up. She was standing by the window now, looking out at the city skyline, at the very tower Sebastian claimed to own. Atticus checked the liquidity clause in the will. Atticus flipped the page, his hands shaking. Oh God." "What?" Sebastian snapped. "What now?" Clause 6. Atticus read, "In the event of a reversion of ownership due to divorce, all liquid assets generated by the misuse of the Caldwell properties shall be frozen immediately pending a forensic audit to ensure the original owner is compensated for wear and tear." Atticus looked up, his face grey. "Sebastian, your personal accounts, the offshore holdings, the stock portfolio, they are all tied to the revenue from the tower. If the tower wasn't yours, the money it made isn't yours either. The court has likely already issued the freeze order." Sebastian pulled out his phone. His fingers fumbled as he opened his banking app. He tapped on his primary checking account. Status frozen. Court order number 4492. He checked his savings. Status frozen. He checked his investment portfolio. Status frozen. "No," Sebastian whispered. No. This can't be happening. I have a flight tonight. I have to pay the pilot. I have nothing. You have your clothes." Amelia said, turning from the window. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a storm. And your watch. Though technically you bought that watch with the bonus from the 2022 fiscal year, which was entirely derived from rents collected on my building. So really you're wearing stolen property. Sebastian looked at Amelia, and for the first time he didn't see the meek, mousy wife he had ignored for years. He saw Archibald Caldwell's daughter. He saw a predator who had been waiting in the tall grass. He changed tactics. The anger evaporated, replaced by a desperate, oily charm. He walked toward her, hands open, pleading. "Amelia," he said, his voice dropping to that husky register he used to woo investors. "Baby, look at me. This has gone too far. Okay, your dad was a smart guy. He got me. Tush. But do you really want to ruin me? Do you want to see the man you loved go to prison for tax evasion?" He reached out to touch her arm. "We can fix this. Tear up the will. We can tell the judge it was a misunderstanding. We'll stay married. We'll rewrite the prenup. I'll give you half. 50-50. Partners. Just like we used to talk about in law school." Amelia didn't flinch. She didn't pull away. She just looked at his hand on her sleeve as if it were a dead insect. "Partners," she repeated softly. "You never wanted a partner, Sebastian. You wanted a stepping stone. And when you thought you'd climbed high enough, you tried to kick the stone away." She looked up into his eyes. "And regarding prison, I recall you telling me once that taxes are for poor people. I suppose you're about to find out just how true that is." She stepped back, leaving his hand hanging in the air. "Judge Miller, I would like to enforce the eviction notice immediately. I want him out of my building by end of business today." "Granted," Judge Miller said, banging his gavel. "Mr. Sterling, you are to vacate the premises of 400 Fifth Avenue immediately. You are barred from accessing company servers. And given the likelihood of federal charges regarding the tax situation, I am ordering you to surrender your passport to the bailiff before you leave this room." "My passport?" Sebastian gasped. "I have a meeting in Paris." "Not anymore," the judge said. "Bailiff, secure the document." A burly court officer stepped forward. Sebastian reached into his jacket pocket, his hand trembling, and pulled out his passport. He handed it over, feeling like he was handing over his soul. "This isn't over, Amelia," Sebastian hissed as he grabbed his briefcase. "You think you can run a billion-dollar conglomerate, you can't even run a dishwasher. The board will eat you alive. They are loyal to me." "We'll see," Amelia said coolly. "I called an emergency board meeting 10 minutes ago. They're waiting for us." "Us?" Sebastian laughed harshly. "I'm the CEO. You're just a scorned ex-wife with a piece of paper." "Actually," Amelia smiled, and it was the terrifying smile of a woman who has nothing left to lose. "According to the corporate charter my father wrote, the CEO serves at the pleasure of the majority shareholder. And as of 5 minutes ago, I own 51% of the controlling stock. I'm not just your ex-wife, Sebastian. I'm your boss." The ride to 400 Fifth Avenue was surreal. Sebastian sat in the back of his own limousine, but he wasn't alone. Amelia sat opposite him. She had insisted they ride together, claiming it was more efficient, but Sebastian knew she just wanted to watch him squirm. He spent the ride furiously texting his allies on the board of directors. Code red. The witch has a secret will. She's coming for the company. Back me up and I double your stock options. He sent it to Leland Banks, the CFO, and his closest crony. Leland was a man who would sell his own mother for a percentage point. Leland understood. "We won't let her in the door. Security is prepped." Sebastian relaxed slightly. Amelia might have the legal paperwork, but possession was 9/10 of the law. If he could physically bar her from the building stall for time and get a counter-injunction, he might survive. He just needed to control the narrative. The car pulled up to the gleaming glass tower, the tower he had named after himself. Sterling Tower. The name was etched in gold above the revolving doors. "Enjoy the sign while you can," Amelia said, noticing his gaze. "I'm thinking of changing it back to Caldwell Plaza. Or maybe just the Amelia." "You're delusional," Sebastian sneered, regaining his confidence as he saw his security team waiting at the curb. "You're not walking into that meeting." The driver opened the door. Sebastian stepped out, buttoning his jacket, transforming instantly into the titan of industry. He strode toward the entrance. Amelia followed, looking small in her grey dress amidst the towering glass and steel. The head of security. A former mercenary named Graves stepped forward. He was a man Sebastian paid handsomely to handle problems. "Graves," Sebastian barked. "This woman is trespassing. Do not let her pass the lobby. If she tries to enter the elevators, remove her, forcibly." Graves looked at Sebastian. Then he looked at Amelia. He didn't move. "Graves, did you hear me?" Sebastian shouted. Amelia stepped forward. She reached into her purse and pulled out a single sheet of paper, the court order Judge Miller had just signed. "Mr. Graves, this is a judicial decree transferring ownership of this property and all security contracts to me. If you touch me, you will be arrested for assault. If you stop me, you will be fired for insubordination. However, if you escort me to the boardroom, I will double the Christmas bonus that Sebastian cancelled last year." Graves looked at the paper. He looked at Sebastian, who was turning purple. "He cancelled the bonus?" Graves asked, his voice gravelly. "He used it to buy a yacht," Amelia said calmly. "The Jessica." Graves's jaw tightened. He turned to his men. "Escort Ms. Caldwell to the elevators. VIP protocol." "Graves, you traitor!" Sebastian screamed as two security guards stepped aside to let Amelia pass. "I'll have your badge. I'll ruin you. You're not the boss anymore, Mr. Sterling," Graves grunted, "and I never liked that yacht." Sebastian had no choice but to scramble into the elevator behind them, fuming. He needed to get to the boardroom first. He needed to spin this. The elevator ride to the 50th floor was silent and suffocating. When the doors pinged open, Sebastian shoved past Amelia, sprinting down the corridor toward the heavy double doors of the boardroom. He burst in. The board was seated around the massive oval table. 12 men and women in expensive suits. At the head of the table sat Leland Banks, looking nervous. "Gentlemen, ladies," Sebastian panted, smoothing his hair. "Apologies for the interruption. My ex-wife is having a mental breakdown. She's concocted some fraudulent documents. She's going to come in here and make wild claims. I need you to stay calm." And the doors swung open behind him. Amelia walked in, flanked by Graves. She didn't look crazy. She looked concerned, dangerous. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice clear. Leland Banks stood up. "Now see here, Mrs. Sterling. This is a closed meeting. You have no business—" "Sit down, Leland," Amelia said. She walked to the head of the table. Sebastian was standing there. She stopped and looked at him. "You're in my chair." "This is my chair," Sebastian roared, slamming his hand on the leather. "I built this company. I took it from a dusty trust fund to a Fortune 500 empire. You think you can just waltz in here because your daddy wrote a note? These people answer to me." He looked around the table. Tell her who leads Sterling Dynamics." The board members exchanged glancing looks. They were sharks just like Sebastian. And sharks smell blood. They had all received frantic emails from their own lawyers in the last hour regarding the validity of the Caldwell will. They knew the stock price was about to plummet if leadership wasn't stabilized. "Actually, Sebastian," Leland said slowly, looking at his tablet, "legal has just confirmed the authenticity of the court order. The voting shares, they have reverted." "So what?" Sebastian spat. "I'm still the CEO. The shares just mean she gets dividends. I run the day-to-day." "Not quite," Amelia said. She placed a folder on the table. "This is a record of Sebastian's discretionary spending over the last 3 years. Corporate jets used for personal vacations, company funds used to renovate his mistress's apartment, bribery of city officials to fast-track permits." The room gasped. This wasn't just bad management. This was criminal liability that could blow back on all of them. "That's a lie," Sebastian screamed. "She's fabricating it." "And," Amelia continued, raising her voice over his, "here is the clause in the Caldwell Charter regarding moral turpitude. It states that any executive found bringing shame upon the family name is subject to immediate termination with cause." She turned to the board. "I am calling for a vote. Motion to remove Sebastian Sterling as CEO effective immediately. All in favor." Sebastian looked around the room. "Don't you do it. Don't you dare. I made you all rich." Leland Banks looked at Sebastian. He saw a man who had lost his passport, his assets, and his wife. A man who was a liability. Leland raised his hand. "Aye." One by one, the hands went up. The woman from the tech division, the man from logistics, even the old guy who slept through most meetings. "Aye. Aye. Aye." It was unanimous. Sebastian stood there, breathing heavily, his world collapsing in real time. The silence in the room was absolute. "You're fired, Sebastian," Amelia said. She didn't shout it. She didn't scream it. She said it with the indifference of a CEO dismissing a janitor. "Security, please escort Mr. Sterling from the building. He is not to take any company property. That includes the laptop, the phone, and—" "Graves." "Yes, ma'am," the security chief asked. "His car keys," Amelia said. "The company leases the limousine. He can take the subway." "This is illegal," Sebastian shrieked as Graves grabbed his arm. "I'll sue you all. I'll burn this place to the ground." "You already tried," Amelia said, finally sitting down in the head chair. It was comfortable. "Now get out of my office." As Graves dragged a kicking and screaming Sebastian out of the room, Amelia looked down at the agenda on the table. Her hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of justice. She looked up at the board, who were watching her with a mix of fear and respect. "Now," Amelia said, smoothing her skirt, "let's talk about the rebranding. I never liked the color blue." But as the elevator doors closed on Sebastian's screams down the hall, Amelia knew the war wasn't over. Sebastian was a narcissist. He wouldn't just go away. He would try something desperate. And she had to be ready. Because a cornered rat doesn't just run. It bites. Rain began to fall on Fifth Avenue, a cold, miserable drizzle that matched Sebastian Sterling's mood perfectly. He stood on the sidewalk watching the sleek black doors of the tower, his tower revolve without him. Security had unceremoniously dumped his briefcase on the wet concrete. He reached for his phone to call for a car, only to remember that his corporate Uber account was linked to the company card. He tried his personal credit card. Declined. The freeze order was faster than he had anticipated. "Unbelievable," he muttered, wiping rain from his forehead. He checked his wallet. $200 in cash. That was all he had to his name in this moment. The billionaire reduced to a handful of bills. He walked 3 blocks to a subway station, the humiliation burning in his chest like acid. People pushed past him, bumping into his $3,000 suit, oblivious to the fact that he was, or had been, a titan of industry. He needed a base of operations. He couldn't go to the penthouse. The locks would be changed by now. He couldn't go to Jessica's. She had made her loyalty vividly clear in the courtroom. He checked into a grimy, nondescript motel in Queens, paying cash for 2 nights. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair, a far cry from the 4 Seasons suites he was used to. Sebastian sat on the lumpy mattress, staring at the peeling wallpaper. Panic began to claw at his throat. He was facing tax fraud charges, eviction, and bankruptcy. But as the initial shock faded, a cold, calculating rage took its place. Amelia thought she had won. She thought a piece of paper and a few sentimental speeches could destroy him. She forgot who he was. He was Sebastian Sterling. He didn't play by the rules. He rewrote them. He opened his briefcase. Inside, tucked away in a hidden lining he had installed years ago for emergencies, was a black hard drive. It wasn't company property. It was his insurance policy. He plugged it into his laptop, the one personal device he had managed to keep. He booted it up, bypassing the standard OS and loading a secure encrypted interface. Years ago, when Sebastian first started funneling money from the charity accounts to fund his offshore ventures, he had grown paranoid. He knew that if he were ever caught, he would need leverage. So he had created Project Icarus. It was a logic bomb, a piece of dormant malware buried deep within the Sterling Dynamics server architecture. It was designed to do 2 things: delete every single client record, blueprint, and financial log in the system, and simultaneously release a fabricated paper trail that framed the original owner of the assets for embezzlement. If he triggered it, he could wipe the company clean. No assets, no records, no value. And he could pin the tax fraud on Archibald Caldwell's mismanagement prior to his death, muddying the waters enough to maybe, just maybe, negotiate a settlement. He dialed Amelia's number. He knew she would be in his office, her office, gloating. Inside the executive suite of the Caldwell, formerly Sterling Tower, Amelia was not gloating. She was overwhelmed. The desk was covered in files. Lawyers were shouting over speakerphone about damage control. The press was camped in the lobby. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. "This is Amelia." "Hello, darling." Sebastian's voice came through, smooth and menacing, though the background noise sounded like a cheap motel air conditioner. "How does the chair feel? A bit big for you?" "It fits perfectly, Sebastian," Amelia said, her hand tightening on the phone. "Where are you?" "The police are looking for you regarding the passport surrender." "Let them look," Sebastian laughed. "I'm calling to make a deal." "There are no deals," Amelia said firmly. "You have nothing I want." "Oh, I think I do," Sebastian purred. "You see, Amelia, I know you're trying to stabilize the stock price. But what happens if the entire client database disappears? What happens if the blueprints for the New Jersey project vanish into thin air? What happens if the bank records showing the last 10 years of transactions are corrupted?" Amelia felt a chill. "You wouldn't." "I have a program," Sebastian lied, exaggerating the control he had. "It's called a dead man's switch. If I don't enter a code every 12 hours, the system wipes itself. And guess what I'm not planning on entering the code?" "This is blackmail," Amelia said. "This is business," Sebastian corrected. "Here are my terms. You unfreeze my offshore accounts. You transfer $50 million to a crypto wallet I will provide. And you drop the lawsuit. You tell the press it was an amicable split, and I stepped down to pursue other interests." "You're insane," Amelia whispered. "I can't just unfreeze accounts. The court did that." "Then you better call Judge Miller and tell him you made a mistake," Sebastian snarled. "You have 1 hour, Amelia, or Sterling Dynamics becomes a hollow shell. You'll own 100% of nothing." The line went dead. Amelia stared at the phone. Her hands were shaking. $50 million. It was ransom. "Ms. Caldwell." She looked up. A young man with messy hair and thick glasses was standing in the doorway. It was Caleb, the junior IT analyst Sebastian had tried to fire 3 times because he wore sneakers to work. Amelia had kept him on the payroll secretly because he was the only one who actually knew how the servers worked. "Caleb," Amelia said, trying to compose herself, "is it possible? Could someone wipe our entire system remotely?" Caleb adjusted his glasses. "Theoretically, yes, if they had root access. Mr. Sterling had the master keys." "Why?" "He says he planted a logic bomb," Amelia said. "He says if I don't pay him $50 million in an hour, he deletes everything." Caleb's eyes went wide. He ran to the main computer terminal in the office, Sebastian's massive setup. "Let me check the kernel logs. If there's a dormant script, it'll show a heartbeat signal." Amelia watched him type furiously lines of code cascading down the screen. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Every second felt like a countdown to destruction. "Found it." Caleb breathed, his face pale. He wasn't lying. "There's a daemon process running. Icarus Exe. It's scheduled to execute a mass deletion command in..." He checked the timer. 58 minutes. "Can you stop it?" Amelia asked, walking around the desk. I can't kill it directly," Caleb said, sweating. "It's encrypted with a rolling key. If I try to force stop it, it triggers immediately. It's a booby trap." Amelia sank into a chair. She had fought so hard. She had humiliated him in court. She had taken back her father's legacy. And now Sebastian was going to burn it all down from a motel room because he couldn't handle losing. "Think, Amelia," she whispered to herself. "What would Dad do? The water belongs to the whale. Sebastian was the shark. He attacked. He bit. But he was arrogant. He assumed he was the smartest person in the room." "Caleb," Amelia said, looking up, "you said you can't stop it because it's encrypted. But can you redirect it?" "Redirect it?" Caleb asked. "To where?" "Sebastian thinks this program will delete our files," Amelia said, her mind racing. "But the command is essentially move files to trash, right?" "Basically, yes, a secure overwrite," Caleb confirmed. "What if we change the target?" Amelia asked. "What if instead of deleting our files, we trick the program into uploading his hidden files to the public server?" Caleb frowned, thinking. "I can't access his laptop. I don't know where he is." "No," Amelia said. "But this program Icarus, it has to communicate with him, right? To get the don't detonate signal. That means there's a 2-way connection open right now between our server and his location." Caleb nodded slowly, a grin starting to form. "Yes, a handshake protocol. I can trace that." "Don't just trace it," Amelia commanded. Standing up, her voice ringing with authority. "Reverse the flow. He's sending a kill signal, fine. We send a fetch signal. Suck everything off his hard drive before he triggers the bomb." "That's aggressive," Caleb said, typing faster. "It's barely legal." "He's holding my company hostage," Amelia said. "I'm authorizing a counter-strike. Do it." Rain lashed against the window of the cheap motel room in Queens, a stark contrast to the penthouse views Sebastian Sterling was accustomed to. He sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, his $3,000 suit rumpled and stained. He had lost his passport, his assets, and his company, but he hadn't lost his arrogance. He opened his briefcase and retrieved a black encrypted hard drive. This was his Dead Man's Switch, Project Icarus. It contained a dormant malware program buried deep within the Sterling Dynamics servers. With one command, he could wipe the company's entire database client records, blueprints, bank logs. He would leave Amelia with a hollow shell. He plugged the drive into his laptop and dialed Amelia. "Hello, darling," Sebastian said when she answered, forcing a smooth confidence into his voice. "I assume the board meeting went well." "Where are you, Sebastian?" Amelia's voice was steel. "The police are looking for you." "Let them look," he sneered. "I'm calling to negotiate. I have a program queued up called Icarus. If you don't transfer $50 million to a crypto wallet I provide within 30 minutes, I will delete the entire digital history of the company. You'll be the queen of nothing." There was a silence on the line. Then Amelia spoke. "You're bluffing." "Try me," Sebastian said, his finger hovering over the enter key. "You have 30 minutes. Back at the tower, Amelia dropped the phone and looked at Caleb, the junior IT analyst she had trusted with the investigation. "He's going to wipe the servers. Can we stop it?" Caleb was typing furiously on the main terminal. "I see the demon process. It's a logic bomb. If I try to kill it, it detonates instantly. It's designed to destroy everything if the connection to his master drive is severed." Amelia stared at the screen, her mind racing. "Wait. You said it needs a connection to his drive. That means there's a two-way open channel right now." "Yes." Caleb nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "He's sending a hold signal." "Don't block the signal," Amelia commanded, her eyes narrowing. "Hijack it. If the pipe is open, reverse the flow. Don't let him delete our files. Suck the data off his laptop." "That's aggressive," Caleb grinned. "I like it." In the motel room, Sebastian watched the countdown timer. 20 minutes left. He took a sip of lukewarm tap water, imagining the look on Amelia's face. She would pay. She always caved. Suddenly his laptop screen flickered. The cursor froze. A command window popped up, scrolling green text at a blinding speed. "Warning, external connection detected. Upload initiated." "What?" Sebastian frowned. He hit the escape key. Nothing happened. "Uploading / hidden offshore. Ledgers as Ellis 100%. Uploading documents, bribes, city council, payoffs 100%. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced his chest. The company server wasn't being wiped. The company server was draining his laptop. "No!" Sebastian screamed, slamming his hands on the keyboard. "Stop it!" His phone rang. It was Amelia. "I'm accepting your surrender, Sebastian," she said calmly. "My team is currently mirroring your entire hard drive to the cloud, and I've CC'd the district attorney." "You witch!" Sebastian shrieked. He grabbed the laptop and threw it against the wall. It shattered, sparks flying. But the screen on the wall had already flashed, "Upload complete." He had to run. They had everything. The proof of the tax fraud, the bribes, the embezzlement. He grabbed his coat and sprinted out into the rain. 30 minutes later, Sebastian scrambled over a perimeter fence at the general aviation terminal of JFK Airport. He saw a Cessna taxiing on the runway, a pilot he had bribed years ago. "Wait!" Sebastian yelled. waving his arms as he ran across the wet tarmac. "Rick!" "Wait." He was 50 yards away when a blinding white spotlight hit him from above. He froze, looking up at the drone hovering silently in the night sky. Behind him, sirens wailed. A black SUV tore through the security gate, flanked by 2 police cruisers. The SUV drifted to a halt, blocking his path. Amelia stepped out. She wasn't holding a weapon. She was holding her phone, live streaming. "Going somewhere," she called out. Sebastian fell to his knees on the wet asphalt as the police officers swarmed him, guns drawn. He looked up at Amelia, the woman he had underestimated for a decade. "Why?" he whispered, defeated. "Why didn't you just let me go?" Amelia looked down at him, her face illuminated by the drone's light. "Because, Sebastian," she said, softly. The lease expired. The trial of the people versus Sebastian Sterling did not last long, but it destroyed what little remained of the billionaire's reputation. For 3 weeks, the courtroom became a theater of humiliation. Every bribe, every forged tax document, and every email mocking his employees was projected onto a screen for the jury and the world to see. Amelia sat in the front row every day. She wore the same steel-grey coat she had worn the day she filed for divorce. She never spoke to the press, and she never made eye contact with Sebastian, who sat at the defense table, looking smaller with each passing day. The orange jumpsuit of the Federal Detention Center washed out his complexion, making him look less like a titan of industry and more like what he truly was, a con man who had run out of luck. The final blow came from Jessica Vane. To save herself from jail time, Sebastian's mistress turned state's witness. She sat on the stand, perfectly coiffed, and detailed exactly how Sebastian had planned to liquidate the company assets and flee to a non-extradition country. He called Amelia the placeholder, Jessica told the jury, her voice cool and detached. He said she was just a bank account with a pulse. But he was wrong. She was the vault, and he locked himself inside without a key. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts of tax fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. "Sebastian Sterling," Judge Miller intoned, looking down from the bench with zero sympathy. "You viewed the law as a suggestion, and people as disposable assets. The court sentences you to 25 years in a federal penitentiary." As the gavel banged down, a sound like a gunshot in the silent room, Sebastian turned to the gallery. He looked wild, desperate. He scanned the faces of his former partners who refused to meet his gaze. Finally, his eyes locked on Amelia. He opened his mouth, perhaps to scream, perhaps to beg. Amelia simply checked her watch, stood up, and walked out of the heavy oak doors. She didn't look back. He had become irrelevant. 6 months later, a crisp autumn wind blew through Manhattan. A crowd had gathered on the sidewalk outside 400 Fifth Avenue, necks craned upward. Among them were Caleb, now the chief technology officer, and Atticus Reed, the company's general counsel. "You ready for this, Ms. Caldwell?" Caleb asked, grinning. "I've been ready for a long time," Amelia replied. She pressed a button on a remote control. High above the street, the massive gold-plated letters, spelling Sterling, were lowered by a crane destined for the scrap heap. In their place, new letters were unveiled, illuminated in a soft, clean white light. Caldwell Group. The applause from the employees wasn't polite. It was genuine. Under Amelia's leadership, the company had stabilized. She had sold the private jets to fund the pension plan Sebastian had raided. She had settled with the Arsal, but more importantly, she had removed the fear from the building. Amelia took the elevator to the 50th floor. The executive suite had been gutted. The black leather and aggressive chrome of Sebastian's era were gone, replaced by warm wood bookshelves and sunlight. She sat behind her father's old mahogany desk. On top of a stack of files for a new affordable housing project, a single envelope sat waiting. The return address was stamped in red ink, Federal Correctional Institution, Otisville. It was from Sebastian. Amelia picked it up. She could feel the weight of the paper. She could imagine what was inside, excuses, blame, maybe a desperate declaration of love now that he had nothing left but time. For a moment she held the letter, tracing the edge with her thumb. "Miss Caldwell," Atticus spoke through the intercom. "Do you want me to file that letter?" Amelia looked at the envelope. She realized that reading it would be an admission that he still held power over her emotions. It would be giving him an audience, even if it was an audience of one. "No, Atticus," Amelia said softly. She didn't tear it up in a dramatic fit of rage. She didn't burn it. She simply dropped the sealed envelope into the recycling bin under her desk, right on top of a flyer for a pizza delivery place. "Just empty the trash tonight," she said. Amelia turned her chair to face the window, looking out over the city that her father had helped build. Sebastian had once told her that the world was a tank full of sharks, and she was just the bait. He was wrong. "The water belongs to the whale," she whispered to the empty room. She wasn't the bait. She wasn't even a shark. She was the ocean patient, deep and inevitable. Amelia picked up her pen and went back to work. She had an empire to run. Amelia proved that while lies can build a skyscraper, only the truth can keep it standing. Sebastian Sterling spent his life thinking he was the smartest person in the room, playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. But he forgot the most important rule of the game: even the king falls if he sacrifices his queen. He lost his freedom, his fortune, and his legacy because he underestimated the quiet strength of the woman he swore to love. In the end, the hidden will wasn't just a legal document. It was a mirror. It showed Sebastian his greed and Amelia her power. It's a powerful reminder that karma doesn't always come with a shout. Sometimes it comes with the quiet stroke of a pen and a judge saying, "Sit down." What do you think? Did Amelia let him off too easy by not visiting him in prison, or was ignoring him the ultimate revenge? And if you were in her shoes, would you have kept the company, or sold it all to start fresh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. Share this video with a friend who needs a reminder that the truth always wins. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.